The opposition NDC describes as recipe for disaster the huge number of ministers appointed by the President Akufo-Addo, adding it will create room for massive corruption.
It is recipe for chaos, it is recipe for confusion. People will now be struggling for turf, people will now be battling for superiority. I don't know what has come over them.
But government disagrees and insists it will rather boost efficiency in the Akufo-Addo-led government.
Akufo-Addo also believes that this is the number of ministers who will help him deliver on this very huge, ambitious program that he has for our national transformation.
Well, General Secretary of the NDC thinks this explanation is the reason he feels the NPP government led by President Akufo-Addo is confused.
If you are confused, you don't know where you are going, honestly.
The new list of deputy ministers and ministers of state designate brings the number of ministers of the NPP government to 110 if they receive approval from Parliament. Well, during his campaign, the president promised to protect the public purse. Question many ask is, does the country need more than 100 ministers to run the country? Can the taxpayer afford to keep this large government? What consideration was given to the public purse when the president made this decision? The bigger question, however, is this the biggest government ever since independence? We'll be delving into the issues and get responses from all the people who matter. This is today's big story. My name is Aisha Ibrahim. 5 ministries will have 3 deputy ministers. They include agriculture, finance, energy, information and local government and rural development. Also, MP for Domko Abenya, Sarah Adjasafo, and Professor Kwesi Yanka are 2 of 4 ministers of state who will be heading to the presidency when they are approved by Parliament. Now, the minority in Parliament has described as shocking the size of the current government, adding it will rather fuel inefficiency.
It's shocking. It's just so shocking because for the first time in the history of the Fourth Republic, we are crossing the 90 mark. We are crossing the 90 mark. Check President Rawlings' ministers. Check President Kufuor's ministers. President the late Atamas, John Dramani Mahama. This is the biggest. It is so shame that you even have somebody, a minister of state at the office of president, he has a deputy. I mean, this is most ridiculous. Someone who is telling the whole country to tighten up their belt. Look at the goods and services of more than 22 ministries put together. It's not even up to the goods and services of the government machinery. They're just adding on, as if with a greater respect. It is as if it is just some chaskelinke, you just keep passing. I think that that's very unfortunate. I'm not doubting the capability of my colleagues that have been mentioned. The size is just unwieldy. It is just too unwieldy. It cannot bring productivity. It is recipe for chaos. It is recipe for confusion. People will now be struggling for turf. People will now be battling for superiority. I don't know what has come over them. I think that this was wrong.
But the government says the huge number is very necessary to clean the mess created by the as-well NDC government.
First of all, the first goal of every president is to look at the enormity of the challenges or problems that he or she inherits, and therefore to draw a program and a strategy for dealing with those challenges. And this president envisages that the very ambitious program of national transformation which he put before the Ghanaian people and which the Ghanaian people have now charged him to implement requires a very strong army to deal with. You know, in battle, the opposition that you face in battle also determines the kind of army that you take to the battlefield. Are you following me? And so he thinks that the kind of program, ambitious program that he has for transforming our country requires more hands than would normally be necessary if he is to be successful in executing those programs. So for him, that is the paramount consideration.
And so you do admit that the numbers are huge?
Oh, of course, to the extent that if you want, this is the highest or the biggest government in our fourth Republican history. I mean, there is no way that you can say that it is not huge. You know the old saying that there are many ways of killing a cat. There are ways of protecting the public purse, okay? Or even if you want, of dissipating the public purse. One of the ways of dissipating the public purse is to create a facade of a lean government. Maybe you can even appoint 30 people and say, oh, okay, we have a lean government. And then the 30 people come off and they sign 51 million cedis to a citizen, and then 500 million cedis to another project, and it goes down the wind, and so on. You can have a lean government that is wasteful.
Are you suggesting that will happen under the previous government?
Exactly. You know what I'm talking about. We all know the Subers, the Saders, the Gdes, and so on. They had, I think, between 82 and 83 ministers. On the other hand, everybody knows the kind of work that the Kufuor government did in our country. Kufuor had 88. Until now, Kufuor would have been the president who goes down in history as having the largest number of ministers or the greatest.
Well, let's do some analysis now. Richard Kwashiga is a minority member of parliament and he represents the Kita constituency. He joins us via phone. Good evening to you. Many thanks for your time on today's big story. Hello, Honorable Kwashiga, you're on today's big story.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Honorable, the NPP government has explained that this huge number of ministers in the NPP government has become necessary to help clean the mess that your government created. Why are you complaining?
Well, I believe strongly that everybody would want to justify that which is considered untoward, especially that they now find themselves in the field, behind the field. They would want to justify it. But clearly, this is going to be a real burden on the taxpayer. 110, unprecedented. I mean, we never imagined it. When we were in government, they had cause to sometimes talk about the number of ministers and etc., only for them to find themselves in government to be doing what Ghanaians would consider unpleasant. I think it's just too many people being asked to do some specific assignment. I believe that this is not the first time we have ministerial portfolios. And we've seen a minister and a deputy minister function in similar positions before, and they discharge themselves creditably. Why these unreasonably huge numbers? You know, in some cases we have 3 deputy ministers, and then we also have other ministers at the of state at the presidency, you know, responsible for same function. I mean, in an era where we're talking about generating more revenue for the state and then spending prudently, we are rather creating a colossal number of Article 71 office holders. I mean, it appears to me job for the boys. Job for the boys and girls.
Creating more revenues and, of course, creating more jobs and all of that. And the government says we need a lot of people to do this job. And you describe it as recipe for disaster. How then does people coming in to get the work done become recipe for disaster?
Recipe for disaster because that will lead to mismanagement. And what is mismanagement? Mismanagement is when 2 or 3 people can perform a task, the same task efficiently and effectively, and yet you're getting about 10 people to perform the same task. Effectively, yes, but efficiently, it's wrong. And so, therefore, that will amount to mismanagement. And if one describes it as recipe for disaster, the person obviously is absolutely right.
Well, during your administration, you recall that you also had a number of ministers which a lot of people challenged. Of course, we had some people at the presidency who people said were not really doing anything there, but were paid with state coffers. So are you just uncomfortable with this because you are in opposition?
Not at all. I believe strongly that the work of the minority is to play the watchdog role and hold the executive on account of the people who we represent. And that is exactly what we are doing. Even if, given without admitting that something was done in the past which was untoward, must it be repeated, in an annoying manner, in an excessive manner? I mean, that is not the way forward. I believe strongly that if we do that, then it means that we are actually not reflecting as a nation. That obviously would not be helping the good people of this country, because we are talking about working at a tight financial rope as a nation, and therefore we must be prudent in all that we do. It is not time for comparison as to what pertained under the previous administration. What is critically important is, are we doing what is right? Whatever action that we are taking today, will it go to benefit the good people of this country? Are we holding the highest interest of the people at heart? I mean, these are the questions that we need to be asking ourselves. What is the reaction of the ordinary Ghanaian out there, hearing that Nana Akufo-Addo, President of Ghana, has appointed such huge numbers as ministers and deputy ministers of state? I mean, will it bode well with them? These are the questions that we need to ask, and not what pertained in the past. Meanwhile, what pertained in the past is nothing near what we are witnessing today.
But you just admitted that the opposition is supposed to put government on its toes. So what do you intend to do about this, since affecting the public purse means affecting all of us?
Well, we will raise the logical arguments. We will reason with the people of Ghana. We will create the necessary awareness for all of us as a people to think through this action by government. We know that the executive or the president sometimes has too much power a good president would need, and too much power a bad president should have per the constitution that we have. So we cannot do anything about it. You cannot even go to court on a matter like this, but all that you can do is to create the necessary awareness, to keep up sentiments positively for people to really appreciate and put pressure on government. We will put our pressure, and we will also galvanize the people, likewise, to put more pressure on the president and his government.
Very well. Many thanks to you, Honorable Kwashiga. Richard Kwashiga is a Member of Parliament for Kita. We extremely appreciate your time on today's big story. But let's do some more analysis of the size of the executive arm of the previous governments. We start with the first president, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, who worked with 41 ministers, just 41 ministers. And okay, so he worked with just 41 ministers. Let's fast forward to Jerry John Rawlings, who also worked with 82 ministers. And then John Agyekum Kufuor increased the number to 93. But the late Professor Mills reduced the number to 75. Now, John Mahama, however, did not follow the footsteps of his predecessor. He increased the number to 84. And it seems Nana Akufo-Addo's government will be the government that brings the huge or the largest in the Fourth Republic. Oh, okay, so we have the number of ministers in Akufo-Addo's government. We have 36 members who are ministers. We have regional ministers and deputies who are 20 ministers for regional ministers and deputies. Deputy ministers designate who are heading to the presidency sums up to 54, and that totals 110 in Akufo-Addo's government. Well, we know, of course, there's been a lot of arguments that this will have a strain on public purse. Let's speak with a governance expert and who's also a political science lecturer at the University of Science and Technology. He will help us do this analysis. Good evening to you, Dr. Brenya. Many thanks for your time on today's big story. Well, I'm told we've lost Dr. Brenya. I'll try and get him back on the line to do more analysis of this. But the General Secretary of the Opposition NDC says the NPP government is confused. And he feels that the more government explains why it has done this, the more he gets confused. Let's listen to him. He spoke earlier on the polls.
I think they are confused, honestly.
Why?
Because you see, the progressive parties who believe that government has some responsibility in tampering with the free market to ensure that people who otherwise cannot compete effectively would also enjoy some minimum standards of life. This is a policy of all progressives. So that is why there is a need for government to intervene. And because of government intervention, there is the need for a bigger government. So this is my first time of hearing a liberal party clamoring for a bigger government. To do what? When liberals believe that government is an encroachment on their civil liberties, on their economic liberties. Now they are telling us that they need a bigger government, so they should go ahead and appoint one minister, one constituency, or one minister, one district, so that the ministers will also help the DCs to prosecute the agenda. If the argument is that because of the nature of the weakness of the economy, they need a bigger team, then they should proceed and appoint a minister per district, so that they can continue.
But
am I hearing this from NPP who are saying?
That's being sarcastic. If you say they should appoint
you are
one
going
minister,
by
one
their
district.
recommendation that because the economy is in tatters, so they need a bigger team to do it. It means they don't know what they are talking about.
They say that your government, which just lost the election, created avenues to loot and share, and that is why we are faced with this problem, which is why the problem is so huge that we need a gargantuan team.
That is why the team must be small and efficient and act in accordance with the liberals' belief in how nations ought to be governed. So you don't come out and say that because there is, a big hole in the economy, so we need more ministers, we need more money to pay the ministers, so that the management team will end up using all the money that they would need to be doing the interventions. I mean, I'm hearing this for the first time. I guess.
What are you hearing for the first time?
That because the problems in the nation, the problem is big, so we need a bigger team. Yes. That's why I'm saying that they should proceed to appoint a minister per district. After all, that's where they have begun.
Let's talk about
when Bush or Trump or anybody took over, and they said that, oh, there's too much waste, there's too big a government, we want to handle the problems of the economy. What they did was to cut down the number of appointees, give 5 people's work to 1 man, and let that person do the work efficiently. And let us save on even the cost of running that huge government.
The fact that it works in America doesn't mean it will work in Ghana.
But I'm saying that, look, where does the government money go? It goes into payment. Some of the money will go into the payment of ministers to make sure that all these ministers are going to be given police escorts. All of them are going to be given Land Cruisers, saloon cars, and all that. And they will be paid at the end of the month. So if you are saying that you are coming to cut down government expenditure so you can get money to finance your projects, and you are beginning with a large overheads, if you like, for the country, then it means you are confused. You don't know where you are going, honestly.
All right, so let's look at the amount of money that will go into all of these ministers. We know that last year, December, a committee reviewing emoluments recommended a pay rise for Article 71 office holders, and we know a cabinet minister who is an MP is supposed to be paid with a monthly salary of 16,423 cedis. The least paid minister is to receive 14,142 cedis, and this applies to a deputy regional minister who is not an MP. The question we keep on asking is whether the public purse can afford to pay such huge amounts. Dr. Edward Brenya is with the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. He joins us via phone, and he'll help us get some answers to these questions. Certainly, Doc, this is the biggest government we've had in our times. But government also explains that if you look at the huge or the big job ahead of them, they need such numbers to get the work done. How does all of these come to you, especially when we have a president who has promised to protect public purse?
Good evening, Aisha, and good evening to the able listeners of our TV. Aisha, it's very interesting. But what makes it more interesting is that, as you rightly said, enumerating how much a minister takes, how much a deputy minister takes, and we are being told that because of the enormity of the job to be performed, that we need 110 ministers. 110 ministers that experienced presidents have shown that none of them is coming to come in, not being given the full salary and allowances that have been paid ministers. Guys, in the history of development, we can talk about Clinton, who at a point in time actually turned the American economy, who ran a lot of surpluses. He didn't do it with that huge government. We know, even though their political system, the federal system that gives room to government and others, they have always run a lean government. And if we want to run it by private sector models, many a time when there is administrative reorganization, many a time you see that at a certain time you even have to let off people to get a lot of jobs done. So what are we saying? Are we then saying that these political appointees are going to turn to the administrative staff? Are they the ones to do the job? Are we going to let off staff because we are bringing in more political appointees? By all logic and by all interpretation, 110 will bring a lot of pressure on the public purse, and we need to call a spade a spade. That is too much for a president that has promised to protect the public purse. That is too much for a government that was very critical of the previous government when it was appointing. The Minister of Information is telling us that we should not focus on numbers, we should look at productivity. Of course, it's a contract. We signed a contract, we gave the job to him, and we're expecting to spend money that is not the president, money that is our money. And just by looking at the number of people that is bringing on board to run it, we feel it's too much, and we have to call spade a spade.
But interestingly, the biggest mystery we've had to resolve all this while has been the fact that do we need more than 100 ministers to run this country? I mean, if we need it, then probably we can't complain about the strain it will bring on the public purse. But again, the question again rises, can the taxpayer afford to keep this large government?
That is the question. I mean, the strain on the public purse. The strain on the public purse is what we are worried about. The taxpayer is paying for each and every one of these people that are being appointed. And the big question is that if indeed the president said that they came in to meet a lot of men from the previous government, of course, do we need, as you rightly said, 110 people to work? These are political appointees. They are political appointees. They are not regular administrative staff. The experts to do the job, they are going to do supervision jobs, whether we like it or not. Nowhere legally can it be allowed that any political appointee will go and do the job of an employee. No. Even if they try that, they will mess up miserably. That is why I think that that number is too much for supervisory role, irrespective of what we are going to assign, irrespective of the enormity of jobs that we say Ghana faces. 110 is too many. And
will definitely have a strain on the public purse.
Absolutely.
Well, we're extremely grateful for your time. Dr. Edward Brenya is a political science lecturer with the University of Science and Technology in Kumasi. Well, before we go, I think we should look again at the number of ministers we've had in previous governments since independence, and shortly you will see that on our screens. Okay, so during Nkrumah's government, we had 40 ministers under Nkrumah, 41 ministers under Nkrumah's government, and then under Rawlings, we had 84 ministers under President Rawlings's government. And then if you look at ex-President Kufuor's government, we had 93 of ministers. And then when Atta Mills came in, he reduced the number to 73. But President Mahama did not follow his steps. He increased it to 75. But here we're faced with 110. Of course, I must say that in Akufo-Addo's government, we have 36 ministers. We have 20 regional ministers and deputies. We have 54 deputy ministers designate, plus ministers of state, and that would total 110. Government has explained, they admit it's the largest number we've had since independence, but they feel it is still necessary. This is today's big story. My name is Aisha Ibrahim. Many thanks for watching. Have a good evening.